Hello and welcome to a fresh new edition of ESG, a Bridge to Action presented by PwC India in association with Moneycontrol. Now, today we are going to talk about one important aspect of ESG compliance and adoption by companies, that is, of the value chain. Let's talk about that with two important experts joining us right here on the show. Let me welcome on the show Kunal Bahl of Snapdeal and Manish Sharma of PwC India. Gentlemen, so good to have you on the show. But before we head into that discussion, let me get you a special message on sustainability.
I think first and foremost, besides being driven by their own charters and ambition, they will be driven by the capital. More and more investors today want to start looking at a checklist of ESG and where do you rank on the ESG parameters. And that is becoming quite an integral part of a lot of the big pension funds and especially pension and endowments. So that's number one. For India, I think it's a bit tough. It's not easy. All the corporate governance standards have come a long way and are improving by the day. I think giving back to society and creating great CSR buzz, all that is working well. But when it comes to production, climate change, having green action on manufacturing is going to be a long drawn process. It's a big change. It's an expensive change, but I think there is going to be very little choice. So I would say we are well on our journey. Indian corporates are very much seized of this. Some of the industries will move towards it quicker, some will take longer. But I would say there's going to be not too much choice in the next 10, 15 years. You probably have to adhere to the higher standards of ESG.
Manish, first question to you. This is more an external transformation when it comes to the ESG standards. How are companies really complying, also transforming it, and also articulating these standards to the supply chain management companies?
See, the entire value chain referral is to the process, the life cycle of the product or the process, from procurement to production to distribution to disposal. It includes everything. Embedding sustainability and ESG factors into each of these elements is what leads to creation of sustainable supply value chains. It also probably will lead to situations where you need to redesign your products. You need to address both the product development phase, its production, as well as its materials being used as inputs, and to minimize the overall product footprint. Also entails pledges by your material and services companies, partners with whom you are working with, to commit to fair labor practices and environmental protection. Why do they need to do it? Because number one, customers and stakeholders are becoming extremely keen on monitoring the ESG performance of companies more closely. They are holding them accountable, not just for their performance within their own direct operations, but also any oversight or flaws in the selection of suppliers, vendors, products or services on offer. It entails that the companies are focusing the profoundness of the impact across the value chains, by whether it's through purchased goods and services, whether it is through their own employee travel, or it is with respect to the product use itself or its disposal. How do they go about doing it? They typically look at it from a point of view of entire risk assessment across the value chain. So whether it is to identify the major product and service categories and the key procurement items under there, understand the impact across the value chain through life cycle analysis, understand the ESG risk associated across the entire thing. They also look at comparing with the best practices which are being undertaken across a range of industry sectors. They look at characteristics that these companies require from their partners and service providers to make sure that they are also sustainable. So it goes down to the level of saying, plan for the entire life cycle analysis, look at the risks, plan for risk mitigation, and bring about your sustainable value chain strategy. You'll have to monitor that as well, because at the end of the day, there is a reporting requirement which our stakeholders are asking for. So it's a fairly large gamut in that sense.
That's right, Manish. Very well pointed out. Now, Kunal, you have been one of the pioneers on the technology thrust that is given to commerce in the country. Now, tell us about the guidelines and the principles that are followed and the purpose of the organization that Snapdeal has.
One of our core guiding principles is to foster partnerships and leverage existing competencies that we've built in this endeavor of ESG. In specific terms, as a marketplace, we connect India's vast and vibrant retail ecosystem and with an increasingly online user base. We have now almost a billion internet users in our country. This creates a positive impact in two significant ways. One, it democratizes online access for consumers, buyers living in underserved parts of the country, and it creates immense growth opportunities for small and medium businesses to cater to a pan India market. Now, technology changes, as we know, can be quite disruptive, but at least at Snapdeal, we believe that with the right intent and thoughtful choices, these can also be very value accretive for the entire ecosystem. And this actually does reflect in the choices that companies end up making.
That's right. But Kunal, I want to know more about the specifics of the targets that you've set for your business. How is that transformation really tying in with the kind of specific targets that Snapdeal has for ESG compliance?
Now, very well put, Nisha. And ESG has been an integral part of our company's journey. It arises organically from how we work and think as an organization and how our work empowers the multiple stakeholders of an organization like ours. So, for instance, with respect to the sellers on our platform, India has a robust retail ecosystem, as I mentioned. Most of it is physical, and a large part of it is in the unorganized sector. But the retail sector is getting increasingly digitized. Now, as a marketplace, we work closely with these MSMEs to get them future ready through training, well structured working arrangements that help them understand how to serve these online customers. We have an early payment program that helps them access their payments in an accelerated manner and hence manage their working capital effectively. We've also partnered with various sellers to introduce sustainable products, including working with local artisans from various states where they don't get access to demand. For instance, we worked with the government of Jharkhand to enable access of artisans in Jharkhand from tribal regions and connect them to consumers across the country. Secondly, with respect to our logistics partners, we operate a fairly complex nationwide supply chain. And for this, we also work directly with a lot of small, local, and regional logistics players, and not just national players. We integrate these small logistics players with our technology backbone, share digital tools and best practices with them. We're also creating economic opportunities, not just in the top cities, but by employing personnel and contracting with service providers from the smaller cities and towns as well. And finally, with all our service providers on the logistics side, we are also now promoting the use of electric vehicles in the coming years as well. And finally, more on the governance side, for us, many of these choices have been part of our journey for a while now. And we've tried to embed elements of social responsibility and governance norms in all our relationships with the various stakeholders and have used technology very effectively to do that. And
Yes.
all these tools bring a lot of predictability, transparency, and help roll out a high level of governance at scale.
Yes. One aspect that I want to touch upon with Manish on this particular journey is that, Manish, there are various aspects to the conduct with the supply chains. Now, is there a right way of approach and articulation and embedding the ESG standards with your business partners?
Very useful to look at that aspect because there is not one approach that fits all. You are looking for certain level of some certain layers in that approach, and in that sense, there are a lot of actions which players will have to deliberate upon before they get down into looking at their entire sustainable supply chain strategy. For example, their actions will have to be guided by the maturity of the organization in the same. Another key determinant will be the executive leadership and their commitment in the area of supply chain sustainability. Now, when companies define their ambitions and make transitions, they'll need to weigh in the right time to begin this process. So we believe that there are at least 4 levels of engagement based on the maturity of companies. Number one, you need to look at defining the ESG expectations for the supply chain. You can look at supplier code of conduct, where you lay down guidelines and you get your partners to pledge to support that code of conduct. For example, when you look at supply chain, you are looking at electric vehicles, which has already been mentioned by Kunal. You are looking at clean energy for warehousing. You are looking at diversity in the supplier pool. At the same time, you need to be able to also monitor and audit. So suppliers can do self-assessment and engage with you. You can do very focused audits around key suppliers and partners. Certain select ESG KPIs for your supply chain partners can be devised and designed, and you need to measure and report your
Yes.
supplier through such assessments. And then you're looking at incentivizing. You'll have to also look at selective procurement, which is a kind of a transition. So you're looking at thresholds of sustainability being set up by your company, and you're saying, this is going to be the threshold for my procurement process. At the same time, you will have to also do what Kunal very clearly articulated around investing into that capability building. You need to really work with them. You need to invest into the capability building. So it's a large task which is set out in that sense.
Kunal, final question to you. What is the role of organizations like yourself, and especially from the new age companies which deal with society at large?
Yeah, Nisha, that's an excellent point, and it's something that I've thought about a lot through the years. Also, as our Prime Minister often says, right, that startups are at the center of India's future and the future of India's society as well, in terms of the impact, needle-moving impact startups can create. Like, for instance, in the recent COVID-related disruptions, we were able to ensure home deliveries and safe home deliveries being made safe to millions of consumers across the country, especially for essentials like masks and sanitizers. We've also been leveraging the significant reach of the platform. We have over 40 million people who come to our platform every month across the farthest corners of the country, encouraging them to create their national health ID. Now, companies like ours can also set a high bar on governance, as I had mentioned. For instance, from our perspective, we've had a chance to learn from leading companies like Airtel to institutionalize practices like quarterly audits, which we've done for the last 7 years as a company. We've also we have a dedicated CSR and ESG governance committee constituted on our board. Now, Nisha, there cannot be greater impact of any business than improving the lives of the people it touches, and that's something we believe quite passionately in as a company. And hence, our belief is that ESG is not a goal; it is an integral part of the journey of any company.
That's right, Kunal. And yes, one point I would like to make is that we have seen several instances of the companies really being held responsible for the ESG compliance of their entire value chain. And therefore, the onus lies on the large companies like yourself. With that, it's a wrap on this very interesting discussion. Thank you so much, Kunal and Manish, for joining us on this with your very valuable insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Kunal.
you.
Nisha.